with your host, Charles Prodigy Ritchie, here on the Mansfield Podcast.
This thing belongs to Mr. Roy. It belongs here, and let's see if we can bring this damn thing back here next year. What the Super Bowl? Here we go.
The game is over. The Pittsburgh Steelers did it the hard way.
With the 10th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft, the Pittsburgh Steelers select Devin Bush, linebacker, Michigan.
Who ride indeed? We ride for today, and welcome everybody to this special edition NFL mock draft preview here on the Men of Steel podcast. Well, of course, yours truly, host of On Deck on ChicagoLandSportsRadio.com. I'm Charles Prodigy Ritchie. Right now, we are getting ready to go into NFL mock draft preview right now, and join me on the line. Thank you very much, by the way. I am being joined right now by NFL Online CBS writer Brian Diardo, who can be followed on all social media platforms at Brian Diardo. He is on the phone with me right now. We're getting ready to share. He's getting ready to share his top picks in today's draft. Plus, I also got my final mock draft with the Steelers. See if anything changes. If you guys want to call in or text following our conversation here with Brian Diardo, the number to hit to dial or text in, that will be 312-209-2232. Again, that's 312-209-2232. Of course, you can follow me on my Twitter platforms at Prodigy Ritchie, at MouseSteelCJR, at OnDeckCSR. I am also streaming live right now on Instagram at MouseSteelNation. Then you can also check me out at Prodigy Ritchie, at OnDeckCSR, my YouTube channel, Meta Steel Podcast. And Brian, thank you very much for taking the time. How's it going, my man? How you doing today?
Doing well, bud. Thanks for having me on the program. Looking forward to the draft. I think it's going to be a good one. I think it's going to be an interesting one. There's going to be obviously some predictable things that happen, but what Miami does is going to be really interesting. If the Lions are able to trade back with them, a couple of teams with multiple picks, the Vikings, the 49ers, the Raiders, will be interesting to see if they use some of those picks to move around or if they're just going to stand pat. And obviously the Patriots, what they're going to do at 23, are they going to try to go up to try to get a quarterback, or is one going to fall to them? It seems like, the big question, two big questions in the first round is going to be, Tua, what happens with him and what happens with Jordan Love. I don't see Tua falling out of the top 10, definitely not beyond 12. And then it'll be interesting to see what happens with Love. Is he going to fall to New England at 23, which I think definitely could happen, or does New England have to trade up to get him? And the other thing to remember is New England does not have a second-round pick, so it's going to be interesting. As all Steeler fans know, they are off the clock tonight, which Mike Tomlin said earlier this week. That might be a benefit because they get to watch, they get to see if there's any mistakes, how it goes, how trades are done. And then they'll be on the clock tomorrow.
Well, especially for the virtual draft. And like I said, I'll always continue to reiterate, and a lot of people will definitely agree. I mean, don't be surprised if some people will be holding their breath. Well, it's like, why'd you give up your first-round pick for a guy like Mika Fitzpatrick? Well, the bottom line is, like, as many people know, you saw not only how much difference maker he was on that defense, but for these also simple facts, too, you also got to remember. One, he's only returning, I believe, about 24 this year, so he's very freshly young. He was only in the second season when he came in here. And the thing is, I mean, with the Steelers, particularly in their case, I mean, this is a team who's been struggling mightily as far as, like, in takeaway for scores department. Now, I will say to you, like, your situation here a few moments ago with a guy like Jordan Love, I mean, I could probably see that happening with Belichick and the Patriots, but speaking of quarterbacks right now, and this is a little bit off to the draft, but what do you think is the biggest hesitation right now with a guy like Cam Newton? Is it still mainly like, people are viewing this guy as damaged goods, or do you think he's probably asking a little bit too much more for his value after playing 9 seasons in this league?
think it's all about his health, and I think that's the big thing. I don't think it's his ability. I mean, his career completion percentage isn't as high as other quarterbacks in this era, but it's still good enough. So he's still young. He's only 30 years old. I think a lot of it is the health. And, you look at Newton, post 15. I mean, his best season clearly was in 15, which is one of the best individual seasons by a quarterback in league history. Did a lot of running that season. He actually is the only member, I believe, of the 35-10 club. 35 touchdown passes, 10 rushing touchdowns, which Steeler fans remember. Cordell Stewart was the first member of the 20-10 club, 20 touchdown passes, 10 rushing at least in 1997. And so I think there is a little bit of a question. Can Cam Newton, can you win with him without the threat of him tucking it down and running? He's taken a lot of hits in his career. He hasn't been protected as well as other elite franchise caliber quarterbacks. I don't think he's ever really gotten his due from the league and officials. So I think that's a lot of it. Is this guy just going to keep breaking down, along with the fact that the injury is coming back from? That affects your throwing. So I mean, is it one of those things where he's just too damaged? It's kind of like a car that you bought it in 2015, but you've got 250,000 miles on it. So on the outside, it all looks good. It still looks sharp. You could probably get a good deal for it, but the interior, is that too much wear and tear already? I think that's the big thing. I don't think it's his attitude or anything like that. I've never heard anything negative about him in terms of being a bad teammate. I just think it's has he taken too much damage already? And I think that's the big question. Not to mention too, it's a very saturated quarterback market right now, and I think Cam will be signed very shortly after this draft. And the more mock drafts I looked at, I saw more and more mocks seeing the Chargers, not mine. I have them taking Herbert, but I see a lot of mocks with the Chargers not taking a quarterback, which makes me think that there might be some people out there that know something I don't, and that the Chargers are going to end up with Cam. I think the Chargers are waiting to see how this draft unfolds, and if they decide to take a lineman, then they might get Cam Newton a call and see if he'll play out in Los Angeles.
Yeah, and you know what, too? I mean, speaking of quarterbacks, too, another one I'd like to follow on here, too. You look at a guy like Phillip Rivers, who's been pretty much like a lifer with the Chargers his whole NFL career. He didn't have anything much work out with Jacoby Brissett. I mean, with the Colts, to be honest, let's be real right there. I mean, he had some good potential, but to be ultimately quite frank honest with you, I still see him more as a backup than anything. I mean, I think people will probably look at him like if he's kind of like a Teddy Bridgewater type. I'm not so sure about that. But you got a guy like Phillip Rivers right now who's coming over to the Colts this year in the AFC South, for that matter. So, I mean, you look at like some of the quarterbacks in that division right now. You got like Deshaun Watson, who might be going for some tough times when you move on from a guy like DeAndre Hopkins. Then, of course, you got like the Tennessee Titans quarterback right now. I'm not so sure if he's going to be really that much of a threat. But what kind of splash can you see Phillip Rivers giving a shot in the arm to the Colts, knowing that their quarterback and Andrew Luck retired a year ago? I mean, how much magic do you think he could work with them? And do you think he's still got another decent shot at a Super Bowl run? Or those days
No, I don't. I actually like Phillip Rivers. I enjoyed watching him play last season. I just think that he had really good weapons in Los Angeles. He had, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. He had Austin Eckler, who he used a lot out of the backfield. He had good tight ends. He had a really good team around them, and they underachieved last year. I feel like the Chargers got kind of a pass. I mean, this was a team that made it to the second round of the playoffs the previous year, and I mean, I don't see the Colts providing him the same supporting cast. Like, Marlon Mack's good. I don't see him being that much better. I mean, their receivers are good. They're going to have to upgrade there. He's got good tight ends. He's got Xavier Grimble. He's got Austin Eckler. They signed somebody else yesterday, Trey Burton. So, I mean, they're trying. He's got a very good offensive line, which I think will definitely help on the interceptions, because you saw a lot of Phillip Rivers picks last year. A lot of them were when he was under duress. So he's going to have a better offensive line. I think for him, they need to take more off of his plate. I mean, Melvin Gordon, when they did get him back last year, wasn't the same guy. By that point, their identity, their offense was Philip throwing the ball. So to answer your question, I think that the Colts front office is smart. Playing indoors is going to help. It's not that tough of a division. I think it's a little easier than the one he's leaving, which had the Super Bowl champion Chiefs and an up-and-coming Broncos team with a good defense. I just think for him, they cannot rely on him throwing the ball for them to win the majority of their games. The running game has to take precedent, and I think Frank Reich should be able to do a lot of good things with him. I think Frank Reich is a really good offensive mind. I think he's a very good quarterback coach. I don't like using the term whisperer, but I think he works well with quarterbacks. You saw it with Brissett when the Colts were healthy. And I think for the Colts, back to your point on Brissett, I think Brissett is a good quarterback for sure. And I think he's a starting caliber quarterback. But I don't think he can carry a team with just above average talent very far. And I think you saw that last year. I mean, when the Colts were healthy, they were 5-2. And then you saw, actually starting with the Pittsburgh game when they lost there, you started to see a trend in the wrong way. And then they started having their injuries, which included an injury to Marlon Mack. And then it started to unravel. And so they obviously feel like if they're going to contend, they needed an upgrade there. Because let's be honest, I mean, the Colts don't have a great defense. They don't have a great offense. So, but they're good enough, I think, in both parts. They just might need a quarterback that can make the big throws. And that's one thing with Brissett we really never saw. Like, could the guy make really tough throws when it really mattered? He did it in spurts last year, but can he do it consistently? I did not like the signing of Rivers, but, I'm not the Colts. So, I think if things work out, ideally, it can work for Rivers. But I see too many scenarios not playing out.
Well, how much do you think this is a factor right here, too? I mean, when Rivers decides to take a gamble and move over to the Colts, how much do you think that the Tom Brady effect has on the league with him going over to the NFC right now and taking the risk with some pretty decent sharks in the tank and the quarterback when you got guys you got to go up against like the likes of Drew Brees, Matt Ryan, and Teddy Bridgewater? Do you feel like Phil Rivers still sees a shot? Like, I mean, I know he kind of shot down his championship level success, but do you think he'll have like an easier path this time around if him and his team could click? You got a first round bye, and probably all you got to really deal with is mainly the Super Bowl champs and the Chiefs.
I think that he just went to whoever gave him the best deal. I don't think the market for Rivers was really that high. I really don't. I think the Colts, I think they were really the only team that really gave him an ideal offer. And I 1 year, $25 million, and nobody was offering multiple years. I mean, I feel like the Colts, was really his. I don't want to say his only option. I'm sure he may have had a few other ones. I think that was clearly, the team that wanted him the most. So I don't know if it was necessarily him wanting to stay in the AFC or whatever. I think he likes the ability to work with a guy like Frank Reich and an offensive line that's really good, a good running back in Marlon Mack, a good receiver in T.Y. Hilton, a good tight end in Jack Doyle. Their defense is good but not great. It's definitely good enough to win with. I think there were so many good things there, and the fact that they gave him a $25 million contract, I think those are the things that really brought him there. I think when you're an elite competitor like that, I don't think you're really worried about what's happening around you. So I don't know if that really played into it. I just think for him it was the best fit in the team that wanted him the most, and that was going to give him the right compensation. And obviously the Colts checked off all those boxes.
No doubt about it. We are being joined on the line right now by Brian DiArdo of NFL on CBS Sports Online right now. You can follow him on all social media platforms at Brian DiArdo. And let's go into like some of the top prospects right now as far as like the top 10, which is usually pretty much the exciting time for a lot of people. I mean, with that being said, we are aware teams like the Steelers and the Bears, they're going to be having their first picks in the second round. Steelers, of course, having their first pick at 49 overall in that draft. While in the meanwhile, you'll also have the Chicago Bears, who'll be having their first pick in the draft. It will be the 18th pick in the second round, so which would be about 50 right after the Steelers. So a lot of people have been speculating on here. What's some of your market value as far as like the O lineman in this draft? Because I know one thing too, when it comes to the Steelers, I was hearing from a guy like Andrew Filipponi of 93.7 The Fan, hearing a lot of tidbits right now. Of course, their primary need is going to be either wide receiver, running back, or edge rusher. But some of these guys, like in this draft right now, I mean, you already got a backup guard to replace Ramon Foster and Wisniewski. But you also got to look at a guy like Marquise Pouncey. He's already got a ticking time clock right now. Maybe he'll have like maybe 3 more years. Do you see the Steelers possibly, or what's your expectation on 1 and 10 that they end up with an O lineman in their first pick in round 2?
I wouldn't be so shocked. It just depends on how many guys are picked early. Like, I think there's going to be at least – I think worse, obviously, Jedrick Wills, Thomas, Becton, Jones, they're all going to be off the board by the time the Steelers pick. And I'm even hearing rumblings that the Chiefs might take Cesar Ruiz, the center from Michigan, who also obviously can play guard, with the last pick in the first round. So I think all those guys are going to be off the board. I think the top 6 linemen will easily be off the board by the time the Steelers draft. I think if maybe Ezra Cleveland or Lloyd Cushenberry or Austin Jackson are there, which I think at least one of those 3 guys will be there when the Steelers are on the clock. They might consider taking a lineman. But again, I think only if those 3 guys are going to be there. Again, Jackson, Cushenberry, or Cleveland. I think after that, I think they'll wait until maybe like the 3rd or the 4th round. I think, one guy that I know that Jim Wexell's 24/7 Sports really likes is Ben Bredston from Michigan. Now he's slated as like a 4th round pick. So that's definitely an option for the Steelers much later in the draft. But no, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Again, I think it just depends on, whether or not, Cleveland, Cushenberry, or Jackson will be there. I don't think Cleveland to me is a toss-up. I'm not quite sure. Ruiz will be gone. If Cushenberry's there from LSU, I could really see the Steelers taking him. Good size, 6'3", 312. Played a lot at LSU, was I think at least a 3-year starter there, highly decorated, did a lot to help Joe Burrow and that offense be successful. Definitely could be a guy that contributes to the Steelers line next year as a youngster. So wouldn't be surprised at all, to be honest with you. And it also depends on what running backs are there too and what receivers. I think those are the 3 positions the Steelers are targeting with that pick. I mean, it's going to be receiver, lineman, or running back. I mean, if DeAndre Swift or Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin are still available, it would be really hard for the Steelers to not go there. I don't think they're that concerned about receiver. I think they're definitely going to draft one, but I'm not really drinking the Kool-Aid of them taking one right away. I think this is a really deep receiving draft, and Kevin Colbert, I predicted he'll have a Martavis Bryant moment where he's going to find a guy in the 4th round or maybe even later that you're just like, oh, okay. There's reasons why he fell that far. Maybe it's outside of the field issues, or just maybe wasn't the number 1 receiver for his school like Bryant wasn't. But I think the Steelers, I think this is where Colbert is going to use his intelligence drafting receivers and find another gem late. So with that being said, I think it will be lineman or running back with the first pick. If you had to twist my arm, I would guess they're going to go. Let's go running back, Charles, because they need to improve that running game.
Definitely.
And I think that there are enough good linemen later in the draft that they and I think they might try to get linemen with bodies, not necessarily with talent. Like they might try to get maybe 2 or 3 later in the draft. But who knows? I think it's going to come down to running back, lineman, and then a distant second receiver.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think running back is definitely going to probably be the number 1 thing, in my opinion. I mean, when you look at like versus 2 years ago, they realized they messed up by not getting an inside linebacker or a legitimate linebacker in the first round when they had their first round pick. So guess what happened? They traded up 10 spots to get Devin Bush. I'm not saying they're going to trade up again this year, but you got to think the mindset is right now when you have a guy without Le'Veon Bell, who was well on his way to crushing Steelers' scrimmage yard records in the history of that franchise. I mean, I think they still feel like they're being stung a little bit without the presence of Bell. I mean, we see what James Conner could do, key thing, when he's healthy. And the thing is, too, another thing they have to consider in their game plan to do get a running back who's going to be your horse that you're going to want to ride versus using this rotational set.
Right, and when you look at the receivers, it looks like there's a pretty considerable gap between the 9th and 10th best receivers. And I'm looking at CBS Sports prospect rankings. Like, you've got Jalen Reagor at number 9 from TCU, 9th best receiver. He's slated as the 41st best player in the draft. After that, you've got USC's Michael Pittman, who's at 58. So unless like a Denzel Mims or a Jalen, Reagor slips to 49, or a Laviska Shenault from Colorado, unless those three, or T. Higgins, unless those guys fall to 49, the Steelers aren't going to reach to grab anybody. I mean, and I think after that, after the second round, you're going to have Tyler Johnson available, who I really like. Antonio Gandy-Golden's a player that I like. KJ Hill from Ohio State, he's a slot possession guy. I also don't know what the Steelers are looking for. Are you looking for a home run guy? Are you looking for more of a possession guy? I think they're looking more for a Martavis Bryant type of guy, which that could be Joe Reed. And Joe Reed is way down there as like a 5th round projection, which I think that's where the Steelers are looking. I think they're looking maybe in this 5th round to get their receiver. So I think it's, the more I look at this, the more I'm thinking it's going to be running back or offensive line. Now, if you're asking what running back is the best fit for them, it just depends on if they still, how important is it for them to have a running back that can catch? When I look at DeAndre Swift, I look at a lot of, and bear with me here, hopefully this isn't too confusing. I see somebody that already looks like Le'Veon Bell. When I see Jonathan Taylor, I see the guy that Le'Veon was at Michigan State and what he became with the Steelers and how he evolved. Because Taylor's a little thick. He's 5'10", 216, which those dimensions are similar to Bell. Taylor actually has decent receiving numbers. Like, none of these running backs that are coming out have great receiving numbers. And I could see Taylor becoming Bell based on who drafts him, And I think every running back in today's NFL is expected to have some sort of ability as a receiver. I think the guy that kind of embodies everything is Cam Akers. And he actually is slated as the 49th best player in the draft. It so happens the Steelers have the 49th pick. So you're hearing a lot of rumblings about Cam Akers. I think Dobbins is just the best thoroughbred in this draft. Just give him the ball. I'm an Ohio State alumni, so I watched him thoroughly against Penn State, the next week against Michigan, Big Ten championship game, and then the Clemson game. Before he got hurt in that game, Dobbins was just a beast running the ball and never slowed down. If it wasn't for Dobbins, Ohio State doesn't get to the college football playoff. That being said, he is not a great receiver. He even addressed that during the combine. He had a couple of drops in the Fiesta Bowl loss to Clemson, which would have stretched Ohio State's lead. So that's why I think he is too one-dimensional and for the Steelers. Swift, I hear mixed things about him, and I don't know how great of a between the tackles guy he is. It seems like he always wants to go to the outside, which is fine, but you have to learn how to run tough, and he's had some injury issues, so I think there's some concerns with him. I think Taylor's really good. I don't see the Steelers being able to get him, which I think leads me to Akers. So if you had to ask me specifically, who are the 2 players you think the Steelers might take with that pick, I think it's either Cam Akers or Lloyd Cushenberry. Okay.
Well, I tell you what, I got a quick list real quick I want to run over with you real quick, and let me know if you want to give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. Here's my mock draft, what I got proposed for tonight, the way I see things going for them, and here's where it stands. Just give me 1 second here.
Now, while you're looking, I really like DeAndre Swift. 5'8", 212.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me maybe a little bit of Darren Sproles when Sproles came out of Kansas State. Now, Sproles was obviously faster than Swift. Swift is freakish. He's really athletic, and I was maybe a little too tough on him. He can get done between the tackles. He's just not known for that. Also, you do have James Conner, and you have a Benny Snell. So you have guys that can get you the tough yards between the tackles. So if you really need somebody to take it outside, DeAndre Swift. And I think if you get a guy like Swift, I think it's imperative that the Steelers draft a running back that can catch the ball, because then you could use Jalen Samuels as trade bait if you really wanted to. Because let's be honest, if the Steelers draft DeAndre Swift, they don't need 4 running backs on the roster. So you could put Samuels on the practice squad, but to me, a team would probably claim him. So you may as well just try to trade him, and then you can put Kareth White on your practice squad. So they need a guy that can catch for that element. And I think that's why Dobbins is not going to happen. And I think it's either going to be Swift, Taylor, or Akers. I think Taylor will be gone. So then I think it comes down to Akers or Swift.
Well, here's what I got. So round 2, 49th overall pick, I'm going to give the Steelers wide receiver Jalen Reagor from Texas Christian. 6.39 combine grade, ran 4.47 4-yard dash in the draft. He's in the top 10 as far as like wide receiving prospects. That'd be my first choice. And I only say that because you mentioned a guy like James Conner, you got Jalen Samuels. With that being said, I think the Steelers wouldn't mind like waiting for their second pick or maybe their third pick, where they could kind of like just be a little bit more calm behind the driving wheel, knowing that the rotation running backs you have. I just feel like there's a little bit more pressure just as much on Schuster as there is Conner. Schuster's not going anywhere for the time being.
I'm not terribly against that. It depends on how good Reagor is. If Rager's really that good, and there are a lot of people that like Reagor. And again, that being said, I think Cushenberry and Akers are the most realistic picks. But if a guy like Reagor falls to 49 and the Steelers grab him, I don't think anybody should be surprised nor upset.
He's ranked 5th in receivers.
Right. If he falls there, I think that's a good pick. My thing is, you obviously don't need. Well, who's going to play the slot receiver? It's probably be Reagor, I guess. Yeah. So you'd have Reagor in the slot. You would have James Washington. You'd have Deontay Johnson. You'd have Juju. I mean, you would be set at a receiver literally right there. I mean, you would be set, and then you could spend the rest of your draft building. And there are good running backs later. And I think it also depends on too, how comfortable are you at running back if James Conner's hands down your best guy. And I think Benny Snell showed at least me enough last year where if Conner did have another injury setback, you can win with a Benny Snell and a Jalen Samuels backfield, and then you throw another talented rookie in there. I mean, that's not the reason why the Steelers kind of fell apart near the end of last year. I don't think it was all really because of the running game. I just feel like they ran out of other parts. I mean, Benny Snell had a really good game against the Ravens. Now, Benny's going to have to work on his consistency. He couldn't bring it week in and week out, which is, he's a rookie, so you kind of give him a pass. But, there were games where he looked great. There were games when he was an afterthought. So, no, I'm not totally against that pick. I think there are other receivers late, and I think, knowing Colbert and how well he is at getting receivers, I think they'll wait. But again, it depends on how great Reagor is. If Reagor really is that good, and I haven't seen that much tape on him, again, there are whispers that he could be a first-round pick. So again, if he lasted at 49, I think you're right. I think the Steelers would probably take him.
All right. And then the third round pick, their compensatory pick that they have, which would be the 102nd overall, 38th in the third round of that draft, I will go with running back. And I'm not going to go with Jonathan Taylor. I'm going to go with a different guy who's ranked just a notch below him. I'll talk about none other than Zach Moss of Utah State. 6.45 combine grade. We have 4.65 dash right here. I can see this guy coming up right here. I mean, in this draft, you got Zach Moss. He is number 3rd ranked position in this. Obviously, the scrimmage yards are a little bit more of a difference in this one. He's got 4,752 yards with 41 touchdowns as compared to Jonathan Taylor, who's got 6,581 total yards and 55 touchdowns from scrimmage.
That's a good pick because he can catch the ball. He has 66 catches in college. He had 29 as a sophomore, 28 last year, averaged 10 yards a catch, which is pretty impressive. Averaged 14 yards a catch almost last year, which is really impressive. I love his yards per carry average 6 yards a carry. I mean, if you just look at his stat line last year alone, 1,400 rushing yards, 15 touchdowns. nearly 400 receiving yards, 2 scores. I mean, he averaged about 7.3 yards every time he touched the ball. My only concern with him is he already has a lot of wear and tear on his body coming out. He had nearly 800 touches in college, so that part would concern me a little bit, his durability, and I would have to look in to see how injured he was, or if he had a lot of injuries in college. But I wouldn't be against this pick at all. You're hearing a lot of good things about Zach Moss in that second wave of running backs, and again, he is more versatile than my boy Dobbins from Ohio State. So yeah, I wouldn't be against that pick at all.
I got a confession to make. I mean, when I've usually been checking out a lot of these prospects within the last 2 years and doing my research, I'm researching pretty much the top 10 as far as their needs. Obviously, it depends where you rate that in that round. But I gotta believe the key thing that always stick out in my mind, like Craig Wolfley said on Steeler Live in the past, is that they're gonna go by who has the best value at that point in time. So I wouldn't be surprised over there. Like I said, I think it will almost kind of remind me of drafting Rudolph from a couple of years ago, where you rated for your third pick. So no rush to do this. I'm gonna try to speed this up for you a little bit. I know you got going, get ready to concentrate on some things, but I also got for my 2 fourth-round picks, I'm gonna go with Anfernee Jennings, outside linebacker out of Alabama, and then also too as hopefully a guy that could be a replacement and start soon, Jordan Elliott, nose tackle out of Texas and Missouri. So my next 2 picks again, Anfernee Jennings, outside linebacker, and Jordan Elliott, nose tackle.
I like those picks. I think Jennings fits a need because as most Steeler fans I'm sure know, they were able to franchise tag Bud Dupree today, but that could very well mean that he's not going to be back. You also lost Chicolo as well, so regardless, they need an edge rusher. They need more pass rush presence, depth. So I think that would be a good pick. And who is your 4th pick again?
My pick after that will be Jordan Elliott, because because of Javon Hargrave going over to Philadelphia, because I thought Javon Hargrave, who I believe was their 3rd pick in 2016, I believe it was. Yeah, it was 2016. I thought he did a spectacular job. I felt guys like him and Stefan Tuitt, those are the guys who helped reshape the defensive front that they've been lacking for a while when Kiesel had to be forced to return after tearing his tricep. I look at key guys like that on the line to shore up with a guy who's still gutting it out, and Cam Hayward. I just feel and that's been part of their pass rush too. I mean, aside from the linebackers right there, I think you want to still make sure you maintain some order in that area, in my opinion, especially a nose tackle when you're still playing 3-4.
Right, and I like that pick too. Elliott was a good player, and I like seeing how guys do after they transfer. He started at Texas, took a year off after he transferred, and then came back and was a starter at Missouri. Played in 22 games there. His sack numbers aren't great, 5.5, but he had, nice tackles, for loss, 16.5. He can get his hands on the ball. He had 3 passes defense last year. And again, I like the fortitude. I mean, we all were young once, and college is tough. And I like the fact that he started at Texas. It wasn't working there. Took a year off, came back, and that also shows me probably untapped potential, because he only played really 2 seasons in college, had to transfer and everything. So again, as we remember, Hargrave. Now I know he played at a lower level, but Hargrave, his sack total in college was immense, and that's why he was a 3rd-round pick. But if you're looking for a run stuffer that could have untapped potential, this could be a bad pick.
No, I definitely agree with you on that as well. Also, too, for my last 2 picks of the draft, they're 6th and 7th round picks. I'm going to go with safety to shore up, just to be a little safe on the safe side. I'm going to go with Antoine Brooks of Maryland, who's graded 6.29, ran 4.54 4-yard dash. And then last but not least, I will go with a lineman, guard John Simpson, to give a little bit backup behind Wisniewski. Don't get me wrong, you have a guy in Chuks Okorafor, a guy who Ebuchet believes that he could rotate into being left guard. I just feel like when you got a guy like Ben Rossberg who's planning to come back, if there's going to even be a football season this year, I mean, if we're lucky enough, I mean, if this virus doesn't get out of hand that bad, but still, even just trying to shake off some rust, like I said, quarterbacks, they're like good cars, but your offensive lineman is having like good car insurance. You still want to make sure you shore that up. So John Sips will be my foul pick after Brooks.
I think, yeah, I like your lineman pick. I think they definitely need to take a lineman later, if not sooner. The Brooks pick is interesting because he actually came to Maryland as a linebacker and then switched over during his career, his last 2 years. Ironically, he had more interceptions during his sophomore season when he was a linebacker than either of the 2 seasons when he was a cornerback. But his numbers. This is why it'll be interesting. The Steelers' philosophy used to be they used to look at interceptions, and if a guy had a lot of interceptions, remember the 2015 draft? They drafted that kid out of Louisville, who's Holloman, I believe. Gerald Holloman was that good. He just was able to catch the ball when it was thrown his way a certain amount of times. But this is a guy with a lot of experience, and I like that for my defensive backs. I like guys that played as sophomores. He was a starter for Maryland dating back to his sophomore year. He can really tackle. And again, started as a linebacker, 237 tackles. I think all but 5 of those were his last 3 years. Can get a lot of tackles for loss. Even when he was a cornerback, his last 2 years, he had, it looks like, 18 tackles for loss. So, again, his numbers aren't great in terms of interceptions, passes, defense, and all of that. But, again, you're looking for guys that can tackle. And that was one of Artie Burns' biggest problems, was he wasn't a very good tackler. So you're getting a guy like Brooks. You're not necessarily getting a guy that's an interception machine, but you don't necessarily need one. You need a guy that can be a good tackler. So my thing, now that we have all your picks, I think they need to go get a safety in this draft. No, you do have him taking a safety. One guy that I think that could be a sleeper. 2 guys. I got Ashton Davis from California.
That's
really
yeah. His name has been brought up a lot.
Junior out of Minnesota. I think those 2 safeties Steeler fans need to look at in this draft to maybe remember. And Kayvon Wallace way later in the draft. I think those are a couple of names to keep in mind.
And he said Ashton Davis, I believe he was a safety, correct? If I'm not mistaken.
Yep, safety. Because they lost Sean Davis, so they definitely need some help at safety. And I mean, I think that Terrell Edmonds is your starter. I think is to steal a Jim Wexell line. No, him teamed with Minkah Fitzpatrick. I think he's a better Robin than a Batman in terms of a safety duo. But, I mean, there's no guarantees he'll be back after his rookie contract expires. You never know. And, again, they need – I mean, Jordan Dangerfield is good, but you need more depth at your safety position. So, and, I mean, we've been hearing forever that Cam Sutton could move to safety. But, I mean, to me, the proof's in the pudding. He's still a cornerback, so – go get a safety if you really want one, and I think that Ashton Davis and again, I think now I've already said I think that it's going to be either a lineman or a running back with their first pick. But I think for the Steelers, you're better suited to take the best available player. If it's Ashton Davis, it's Davis. If it's a receiver, it's a receiver. And I think that's how the Steelers will approach this draft. And it's a nice luxury to have. They don't have a lot of glaring needs. They have good linemen. They have Ben. They have a Pro Bowl running back. They have a Pro Bowl receiver. They have a million talented guys on defense. So you take the best available guys that can make the quickest impact on your team. And I think that's what they'll do.
Yeah, of course. So I will definitely also say to add to your point with the safety, too, I don't think you want to keep putting the pressure on Minkah Fitzpatrick as dynamic as he is. Remember, he did have a spurt down the stretch of the season where teams were starting to key in on him. And when you have a guy like Jordan Dangerfield, who's been kind of like in and out, and then you also had some other people at that safety, as you just pointed out a few moments ago, that's nothing you want to fall asleep at the wheel at, because at the same time, you want to keep this takeaway production going. I don't think you want to disrupt a momentum that you've been building so long for, because winning your takeaway battle helps that turnover ratio a lot in more ways, aside from your corners.
Yeah, for sure, and I think the Steelers are set up for some really good, success in this year's draft. I know they don't have the number 1 pick, but I mean, again, they went and got Minkah Fitzpatrick
at a young age, mind you, too. That's what I'm saying. He's very young. It's not like he's in his mid-late 20s. You're getting this guy. You're getting this guy who's been barely used. It's like going to CarMax. I'm getting like a car that's been only used for maybe like 2-3 years. That's not a bad deal.
Absolutely, and again, when you look at Steelers are the only team outside of New England that consistently is good year in and year out, and they have been for the mostly for the last when you really look at the last 30 years, nobody's had the consistency the Steelers have had. They had a couple of losing seasons in the late 90s, 2 losing seasons in the late 90s, 1 in the early 2000s. But other than that, I mean, since 92, they've had winning seasons every year but 3. So, well, at least, non-losing seasons, because they've had these 500 seasons here. But one of the reasons why is they've always had one unit that's really good. And we talked at the beginning of this conversation about the Colts. They don't have neither. Like, their offense is fine, their defense is fine, but they don't have anything great. The Steelers' defense last year was on the cusp of being great. You look at the last decade, the second half of the decade, the offense was great. Defense, not so much. When you have one facet of your team that's great, you have a chance at winning the Super Bowl if the other side doesn't lose it for you and does enough to complement that unit. It's very hard in today's NFL to have what the 78 Steelers had, a great offense and a great defense. It just is. Not that it can't happen, it's just much harder for that to happen. And New England's been able to pull that off a couple of times. But, and so, once Ben got hurt last year, the Steelers realized, all right, it's time. This offense doesn't have Ben or Brown anymore. It doesn't have Bell anymore. And I think the thing that nobody talks about, the writing was on the wall in New England. They got shellacked against the Patriots opening night, and it was clear even before that that the time of the offense carrying the load is over. It's time for the defense now to take charge, and that's why I love the Minkah move, because it was just like, all right, like now we're going to go the other way. It's going to go back to being a dominant defense. We need an offense that's just good enough. So, they don't need a bunch of superstars on the offensive side of the ball. Those guys now play defense. T.J. Watt, Joe Hayden, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Bud Dupree, Cameron Hayward. You've got all Stephon Tuitt. Now you just need to get that offense to a place where you're complementing your defense. Then Roethlisberger doesn't need to throw for 5,000 yards next year. He just needs to do enough, and they need to continue to play good fundamental football. And I think that is where a guy that can catch the ball as a receiver is important, because you're minimizing your interception rate when you're throwing lower percentage passes. And I think that's one of the things that got the Steelers in trouble in 18 was, as good as Connor did catching the ball last year, he wasn't Le'Veon Bell, which is, that's no indictment against Connor. So, and they have to be a good red zone team. They were an awful red zone team last year. They were number 1 in the league in 18, but Chris Boswell missed field goals. So this year they have to put it together. They have to be able to score in the red zone. They don't have to be number 1, but be top 10. And Boswell has to continue to be Boswell. That defense has to continue to be sharp. They need to add some depth, and I think they will. And I think it should be at least 10-win or 11-win team for the Steelers next year, assuming that Ben comes back fine. If Ben comes back, has some issues, we're looking at another season like the one we just saw. But if Ben comes back close to where he was before the injury, this is a 10 or 11-win team.
So, in other words, in translation, Brian, what you're trying to tell me is that the Steelers are going from the Killer Bees to the Thriller Ds.
Yes, for sure.
All right. Well, hey, real quickly, just a few more things real quick. We also seen this year, before we get ready to wrap up here, the compensatory picks for this year, as 32 teams have been awarded. We already seen 3 different trades with those comp picks. The Texans trading their 3rd-round pick to the Browns. You also have the Ravens trading a 4th-round pick to the Falcons. And also here in my hometown of Chicago, the Bears. Interesting enough, they gave up their 4th-round pick to the Jaguars to acquire Nick Foles real quick. What do you feel like the ceiling of patience is going to be for a guy like Mitch Trubisky going in this year, seeing how lackadaisical their offense was and some parts of their defense after taking as much rest as they did last offseason? What's the scale of patience for Trubisky?
Mitch Trubisky needs to not listen to the outside noise. And I think, wasn't he the guy that said they turned down the volume or something in their building? And I know that's hard when you're in a city like Chicago or Pittsburgh, and the outside noise is much louder than it is in other cities. And I think that's one thing that teams need to try to ignore, especially quarterbacks, the outside narratives. Because when you go out on the football field, there's already enough pressure. The last thing you want in your mind, and I remember Joe Montana saying this when he used to be an analyst for NBC going into Super Bowl 30. They asked him, what does Neil O'Donnell need to not worry about? And he said, don't be worried about having a slow start. He can't be killing himself if he starts the game 0 for 5 or 0 for 6. He just needs to trust that it'll come to him and that he'll get it done. Even if it's not pretty at the beginning, trust it, stay with it. I think for Trubisky, I mean, you also have to look around. I mean, what were their options? Their running game wasn't great. Their receivers aren't great. Any quarterback is going to look average. Look at Tom Brady last year. Nobody was talking about Tom Brady, being a shell of himself when he had Antonio Brown and Josh Gordon and a healthy Julian Edelman to throw to, and Philip Dorsett. But once Brown was gone, Gordon was gone, Edelman got hurt, all of a sudden he looks bad, not even average. Tom Brady looked bad last year. So, I think for Trubisky, they have to surround him with more. He proved in 18 that he's good enough. I just think that they need to continue to try to build around him. And I think for Trubisky, he needs to focus on the craft and not worry about, the narrative out there is that I stink or that Nick Bolts might take my job. He needs to not look over his shoulder. He needs to focus on becoming the best player that he can be, and I think they're going to be fine. But I just think that he, in my opinion, very much an outside opinion, I think that Trubisky listens to the noise too much and needs to not. And I think that team in general needs to not care about what the outside world says, and they need to focus more on, and that's where I think Tomlin is a cut above, and that's where I don't think he gets enough credit, is I think that he, last year at least, in the past he didn't, but just don't worry about the outside narratives. Just let's work on the building, and we'll be fine.
Yeah, no, I definitely could agree more. Because remember, Daryl Drake, who just passed away, who was a longtime assistant.
Ignore the noise.
Yeah, exactly. And remember, he was also a long time with Lovie Smith and the Bears. Very good saying, I might say so. But I will say this, 5-1 before we let you out here. Which guy on defense can you see be like a game changer for the NFL? Do you finally think we'll probably see a pick where a guy could possibly be a defensive MVP and all, league MVP as well as defensive player of the year? Anyone that stands out right now that people need to watch out for in this early round?
I mean, Chase Young is really good. I mean, I watched him at Ohio State, and he didn't have sacks in the Big Ten championship game or the college football playoff against Clemson, but he hit the quarterback. He made pressures, and they were keying off on him. I think that Chase Young could be a really good player. He's with the defensive coach and out in D.C., so I think that's going to help him and Ron Rivera. Jeff Okuda is a really good player, but he's a corner, so I don't think people really worry about corners. But I think Okuda is really, really good. Obviously, I'm biased, being an Ohio State guy. I think that, Isaiah Simmons is a guy that I'm really interested in because he was kind of he was on the board. People knew of him, and then he ran that 4.39 at the combine. Everybody kind of freaked out. So if I had to pick one, I'm going to go with Okuda. I think he's a really good player. And cornerbacks do have a tendency to get a lot of notoriety if they're good. I mean,
right.
Look at Revis. You look at Richard Sherman. So I think Okuda is going to be a really good player. And he really is. If you look at all the positions, there's not many positions where you say, okay, hands down, this is the best guy. Chase Young for an edge rusher. Okay, there you go. Burrow quarterback. But even before Tua got hurt, it was a coin flip between him and Burrow. People forget that. There is no even with running backs, DeAndre Swift and Jonathan Taylor. That's pretty much a coin flip. And there's even people that think Cam Akers is just as good. Nobody thinks that there's a cornerback in this draft better than Okuda. So what does that tell you?
Yeah, no, I'd definitely be interested. And speaking of quarterbacks right now, too, it's really interesting to see what happens with Dak Prescott and the Cowboys right now. Jerry Jones still not paying the man, but don't forget, he's also the same guy who came across where you want to view it childish or just making a big mistake right there, partying around Easter weekend with the social distancing thing going on right now. And the Cowboys still having a decent pick in the first round right now. What do you think? Do you think
they're going to go cornerback? They're going to go probably cornerback or defensive line. I think those are the two things they need. They let their best cornerback leave in free agency. So, yeah, I think the move is corner for them. They've got a lot of good corners. If C.J. Henderson from Florida's on the board, they'll take him for sure. If not, they might take like Javon Kinlaw or someone like that. So I think those are the two moves for Dallas.
Do you think let me ask you this real quick, just a fun little thing. Do you think we'll see any of the Gronk energy drinks being promoted up or anywhere on TV, YouTube, or anything in between draft rounds throughout this draft? Now he's going to be joining up in Tampa. How much do you think we'll see Gronk's brand along with TB12?
I don't care where I see Gronk as long as it's not in the Heinz Field end zone. And other than that, he can do whatever he wants. I'm good with it.
Even with being the WWE 24 champion?
Yeah. Well, real quick with that, I'm happy for Bruce Arians. I think a lot of Steeler fans still like him. And if the Steelers can't get it done this year, I would love to see Bruce Arians hoist a Lombardi trophy. I think he's a really good coach.
Definitely.
I don't think the Steelers made a mistake at all not hiring him as their head coach. I think Tomlin was the man and was the right hire then.
But he was also jeopardizing Ben's career with all the hits. That's where his falling out came from. A lot of people in the organization they just could not have.
I mean, but that was also the way Ben played back then. And,
yeah.
It is what it is. And I think, it is what it is. I think the time had expired. But, no, I hope that they win it, even if that means Brady gets 7. I really don't care as long as it's not New England. He can win as many as he wants other places. But, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what they do down there. And, again, I'm a big Bruce Arians guy, so I hope it works out.
And I wonder if history will repeat itself like 16 years ago. If Joe Burrow will be able to talk his way out of a Cincinnati uniform this year. I got to believe right now, what's the feeling in that right now with him?
He wants to play there. He actually is 45 minutes south from me as we speak. In Athens. No, he's fine. I mean, I don't think he was a Bengal fan growing up, but his family gets to go see him play.
I'm not going to say he didn't support his team growing up. I think just the biggest hesitation with a guy, and I mean this with no disrespect, but you look at the Bengals the last 10 years or so, and you've seen how things were kind of ran right there. You're still transitioning barely out of the Marvin Lewis era right now, as far as the trust and reliability in that organization overall as a whole. They put themselves, in the headlines for the wrong reasons for a long time.
I like Zach Taylor. I think he's smart. I think that Burrow and any young quarterback would look forward to playing with him.
Yeah.
I like the fact they fought last year. That's one of the reasons why the Browns fired their old coach, because Week 17 the Bengals looked like the team that had all pros and Pro Bowlers, not Cleveland. So no, I think that the only hesitation I would have honestly is trying to get the culture changed. But I think that Taylor's already working on that. I think my biggest issue would be playing in such a hard division. That would be my problem. But no, I think he's looking forward to it, and I think he's excited about it.
Brian, great stuff as always, my man. Like I said. Just where you plan watching the draft again, and what's the latest you got awaiting you after this, as far as project-wise with CBS?
Well, I'll be running a live blog on CBSSports.com with my buddy Josh Edwards. I will be doing a winners and losers of the first round summary when it's over, and I'll also be doing a trade tracker, which you can see on the website. So any trades that happen. You can keep a running tab on them. I will be keeping a running tab on them that you can see. So thanks for allowing me a chance to give a shameless plug. Oh,
no problem. It's always an honor having you on. And sorry if I went a little bit extensive, but it was always great talk and back and forth stances on this, as always, my man.
Thanks again, Charles. Enjoy the draft, buddy, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Likewise. And like I always say to everybody else, be safe as always during this, please. I hope wish you and your wife and your family, loved ones and friends, continued health and success. Thank you so much.
You too, my man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Likewise. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, that was Brian DiArdo of NFL on CBS Sports. He's a writer online, and you can check out his articles. You can follow him across all social media platforms at Brian DiArdo. And that's just a very interesting stuff right there. I definitely feel like that's got to be one of the hot burning topics right now, the Joe Burrow saga right there. He definitely feels like he's going to be able to play. Like I said, I'm a little skeptic. I would not be surprised if there's something negotiated, but we'll see what happens. You got to believe when you're at this peak level of your football career, coming off of college, winning a Heisman Trophy, and then winning a national championship, not that too many guys in that area succeed, but how many opportunities you're going to get like this? I think sometimes you just have to you got to bite the bullet and somehow make it work. Because trust me, whenever you go play for another team, you start tampering with trust issues right there as far as how people are going to want to deal with you, and are they going to have that similar fate happen to them. I think that's some very reasonable stuff here on here. Now let's get ready to wrap it up here on this Man of Steel podcast here with some topics of fair or foul right now as we get ready to go into it. Fair or foul topic number 1, James Conner. Will he be dealt for the Steelers to move up in this year's draft? I am going to say fair for right now. Listen, I mean, James Conner is good when he is healthy, but at the same time, he has not been the most reliable back when it comes to physical health. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't care who he is. The thing is, I mean, the fact of the matter with a guy with James Conner, he's pretty much struck lightning in the bow with that 1 year, yet he didn't rush for 1,000 yards in that season. I mean, you saw James Conner has career high in rush yards back in 2018 with 973 yards, amassed for 1,470 yards with 13 touchdowns, with 12 of those being rushing touchdowns. And I think a lot of people hopped on the bandwagon only because knowing like what happened with Bell and just trying to move on and make a stamp with the organization. So I'm going to definitely say fair. Just don't roll out. You just never know. And I just would not be right the wrong of losing the first round pick. But obviously they are happy with a guy with Minkah Fitzpatrick. So you better believe if they're showing out there they really want, trust me, deals can be made. I know the draft capital is pretty low with 6, but I think it's definitely makeable here. Also, let's get into fair foul topic number 2 here on this draft. Will the Steelers be inclined to take an O-lineman as their first pick in the second round, 49th overall? I'll probably say foul. Again, nothing to be ruled out, but the main needs, as Brian and I just discussed a few moments ago, as you could hear on the show, it was definitely running back and receiver, edge rusher, and then maybe O-lineman, I believe, in that order from my perspective. But we definitely agreed it was more likely probably be an offensive player here. And speaking of which, I want to just, before we get out of here, I want to go over real quickly Ray Filippo's mock draft here, who writes for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. You can follow him at RayFit1. And here were his picks that he's got going into this year. And for those of you, just a reminder who will be watching the draft, the 2020 NFL draft schedule and time, you're going to be having the first round of the draft. They'll air live tonight at 7 p.m. Central Time and go on until 10:30 p.m. And that's going to be available on ABC, NFL, and ESPN, NFL Network. It's going to be on those stations. And then you're going to be having Friday's TV coverage of the draft. They'll be starting at 6 o'clock Central Time. And then on Saturday, you're going to be having at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. So those are the things to look out for right there. So here's Ray Filippo's mock draft right here. He's going to be going with Cam Akers, running back out of Florida State, who has a 6.35 combine grade, 4.47 4-yard dash, 6th ranked position. And then you also got who he mentions about Akers. He's a complete back, capable of staying on the field all 3 downs, would be the feature back of the future for the Steelers. Which, by the way, Akers, who has been very productive, with 2,874 yards rushing and 27 touchdowns, and well-rounded with 69 career receptions. His next pick after that, he is going to be going here. Right now, he'll be going with Devin Duvernay, wide receiver out of Texas, 6.00 combine grade, and a 4.39 4-yard dash, ranked 31st. Duvernay is one of the fastest receivers in the draft, timed at 4.39 in the 4-yard dash. Then he's also got Anthony Jennings, outside linebacker out of Alabama, 6.35 combine grade, 4-yard dash, 8th ranked position. I believe they need to add depth at their outside linebacker, and they need a player with star potential to develop behind Bud Dupree as we look at it. Also, too, he believes right now with the outside linebacker position, they do need to have depth right now. With Bud Dupree, who's especially playing 2020 season on the franchise tag, Jennings could do just that. Then he's also got right now center Nick Harris out of Washington, 6.12 combine grade, 5.14 yard dash, 5th ranked position. He can be the backup starter behind Marquise Pouncey, get a lot more flexibility. This CBA, we're going to have a little extra bodies on the sideline. I believe it was up about 55, if I'm not mistaken. And then he's also got, last but not least, defensive tackle, Rashard Lewis. Oh, no, excuse me. This is a 6th-round pick. So you got defensive tackle, Rashard Lewis out of LSU, 5.92 combine grade, 5.07 4-yard dash. And speaking of which, as far as like this guy, Rashard Lewis, here is his stats in college at LSU. He has amassed right now 120 total tackles, 20.5 for loss, with a career high being in this junior season in 2018 with 10. He's accumulated 9 sacks in his career. So that may not be a bad guy right there, especially coming out from the defending champions here in Alabama. And then last but not least, for the Steelers, are going to be going with Evan Weaver, inside linebacker of California, 4.76 4-yard dash, 5.95 combine grade. And here's a tail of tape on him. He has got 23.5 tackles for loss, with 11.5 coming in his senior year, 407 total tackles. So this guy might be a decent backup. Maybe he could mold into a starter later down the road, but it looks like he's got a chance to become a starter in this as we get ready to look here. And, yeah, so I think that's a very interesting draft right there by Filippone on here. I mean, Filipalo, excuse me, not Filippone. And I think definitely one of the guys I think we had in common here in this draft, as far as everybody, as we looked at it, I mean, it's definitely real interesting here. But Anfernee Jennings, that's one of the guys who I selected too. So we're got one out of the 7 here, or the 6, I should say, excuse me, on here in Jennings. So I wouldn't be surprised with him. But also, too, Ray Filipalo also got a chance to speak to Rob Woodson, who definitely had this to say on their first pick for the Steelers coming up. He believes it will be a waste pick they used on a defensive player, said Woodson, who played for the Steelers from 1987 to 1996. I mean, their first obvious needs are receiver, running back. They need help for that offense. I think they need a receiver more, but wouldn't be surprised they took a running back. That is definitely well said right there by the Hall of Famer, and I can't blame him for sharing those sentiments right there. I mean, yeah, I really think, I mean, yes, it's transitioned back into a defensive style of play, but at the same time, too, you don't want to be without having some good stuff. And I have to cut it short on my Instagram here. Coming out of a low battery right now. So, got me live right now on Facebook on the Meta Steel podcast right now. As guys continue to check me out, I'm still not going anywhere. You can still catch me on Facebook live right now. And just want to say a big shout out and thank you to the guy and Brian Diardo, who has joined me here on this early Thursday afternoon here, as we're counting down. As Steeler Nation, you guys have a day to get to yourselves before you get into their first pick at number 2 overall in this draft. Cannot wait to see what they do and what's going to be their biggest plans here going forward. But as I always leave you, don't be trolling, be rolling. Here we go, Steelers. Here we go. I gone.